Hey everyone, welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Julia Beauchamp and I'm here with Computer World Executive Editor Ken Mingus, as well as Macworld Executive Editor Michael Simon. We are live on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. So if you have any questions or comments while we are live, please do leave them in the comments and we're going to do our best to get back to you and answer your question. Today's topic of the day, early benchmarks suggest that the upcoming soon to be shipped, soon to be in the hands of customers M1 iPad Pro is vastly faster than even the MacBook Pro, the 16-inch MacBook Pro with the Intel processor. So big news. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of happy customers, and we have one of them right here. So I was hoping today that we could talk a little bit about, the merits of using an M1 iPad Pro versus a MacBook Pro. So I guess, Ken, I'll throw it to you first. I mean, can you tell us a little bit why you were so desperate to get your hands on one? Obviously excited. I mean, an iPad
I
Pro
could actually answer that too if you.
Mike is my official spokesman, but it's a complicated question and answer, Juliet, because the iPad Pro that I have now is the 2018 model, and it's perfectly suitable for what I use it for. I can use it for light work. I can do editing on it. I can access our content system to update the Computer World website, email, surfing, chat, things like that. For me, it's a convenience thing, in
Sure.
terms of having an iPad Pro and a MacBook Pro. I use the MacBook Pro mainly for work. The iPad is more for carrying around, taking to the beach, going out in the yard. In terms of what we're talking about are the benchmarks and what's surprising, maybe not too surprising, but the M1 iPad Pro, which is due to arrive May 21st, so that's a week from tomorrow. Excuse me. Basically has the speed and
Arrive to
capacity.
you or arrive in general?
It's arriving to
yours
people.
is scheduled to come.
Correct. Yeah, I got the notification that it has shipped and will arrive by 7 p.m. on May 21st. So
Exciting.
I'm a happy camper. But part of it is I wanted to see what this M1 chip is all about in terms of the iPad Pro. I mean, I've got the MacBook Pro with the M1 in it, and it is blazingly fast. I assume the iPad Pro will be the same. But what I'm hoping for, and this is the point that Mike and I always talk about, is that Apple will actually do something with iPad OS that will make it worthwhile getting the M1.
Sure. That makes a lot
So
of sense.
that's sort of where I'm at right now.
It
I'm
makes
very
it makes a
jazzed.
little sense. It's still
Now, for the alternative view, take it away, Michael.
Well, all right. So the benchmarks that we see, they're not. I mean, I wasn't at all surprised. It's an M1 chip. It's based on the A14 chip. In a different timeline, there's an A14X, which is essentially an M1. We're talking about branding, really. The A14X, which is what the iPad Pro of this year would have been in any other year, would have ran circles around the A12Z, which is the one that came out last year. And I think, Ken, you have the A10X.
A12X or
Oh, it was the A12. It was the 12 still.
I think it was the 12.
Whatever was in that one. I mean, so it's faster. And the question again, I understand the need for that type of speed in a MacBook Pro, an iMac. All that makes sense because of what you're doing with it. For one, powering screens and all the things that you do with the Mac, external hard drives, heavy duty applications. When Apple released this iPad with a ridiculously cool screen, insanely fast processor, 16 gigs of RAM at the top, which I'm assuming
If you go to the
didn't
1
get that one,
terabyte storage, yeah.
which is,
That's a
I mean,
lot.
those specs are mind-boggling. I'm not gonna, it's crazy that they are able to put that much in a tablet that's like, I don't know, what is it, 4 millimeters thick, whatever,
Yay big.
6. It's crazy. But the question I have, and I think Ken has it too, but he doesn't want to admit it, is why?
I know, I
Like,
admit
what
it.
are we gonna do with that?
I want to
speed?
find
that-
out. I think we
yeah.
will find out at
But are you?
WWDC
But
in
how?
June.
But all right, let's say WWDC brings the changes that we want.
Yeah.
What specifically about the M1 chip is going to, like, what specifically will you need the M1 chip for?
I don't know that I do, to be honest with
Right.
you. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know that. I mean, I don't know there's
Yeah.
anything that the M1 will do that, again, my 3-year-old iPad Pro or 2-year-old
Yeah.
iPad Pro
Or even
doesn't
5-year-old
do.
iPad Pro.
Yeah.
I mean, the iPad Pro has been fast enough
Yeah.
for a long time.
overpassed even for what you get.
Yeah.
I really am not buying it for the M1 chip. For me, it's more the screen. It's the
Mhm.
the new mini LED screen. And I mean, I'm a hardware guy, so I'm attracted to the latest greatest hardware.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
hoping
gorgeous, no doubt.
and I'm hoping that Apple will finally follow suit and put some real oomph behind iPad OS. I don't know. We're going to find out. I mean, at worst case, I'm not any worse off than I am now. I'll trade in the iPad I've got now, and that'll cut the price on the new one just about in half. So for a few $100, I get to upgrade. But I think the jury is out. And again, back to the original point you were making, Juliet, about the benchmark. It's not a surprise. I mean, it is an
Right.
M1,
It's an M1,
and M1, and all the way through. And but
it's an M1 with 8 gigs of RAM. That's more that's more RAM than my iPad has ever had. 16 gigs is. I can't wait to see the benchmarks on those. They're going to be
well,
through
I
the
mean,
roof. It's crazy.
so answer this. I mean, Apple is not known for beefing up hardware just for the sake of beefing up hardware. Usually there is some plan to marry that to software that takes advantage of that hardware. So do you think it makes sense to assume Apple's going to, come up with some changes to iPad OS that will take advantage of it, or that they're just, well, we got the M1, we'll put it in the iPad and sell a bunch of them?
I mean, it's hard to say because, all right, let's look at the Macs. We have the MacBook Air for $999, and then 13-inch MacBook Pro, which we both have for what is it, $1299.
$1299? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the difference? There's not much. There's not a
Form
ton of
factor.
difference between those two
Form factor.
machines.
Yeah.
Form factor a little bit. Some sustained performance things that you got the 7 GPU versus the 8 GPU and little things like this, the touch bar, some stuff. The core product is the same. You can do just as much on a MacBook Air as you can do on a 13-inch MacBook Pro. Most people probably it overlaps a lot.
Yeah.
So when you look at the iPad Pro and the iPad Air, let's take the 12.9 out of the picture for a moment. So you got a $799 versus $599.
Mhm.
There's a lot of overlap there. A lot.
Yeah.
You got Face ID versus Touch ID. There are differences. The screen, you have the ProMotion versus just the simple LCD on the iPad Air. So there are definite differences, but you really have to dive in deep to see to see what those are. I mean, that's kind of what Apple has done with these Pro machines, all of them, even the iPhone. It says, okay, we're making the highest level consumer product. So the iPad Air, the iPhone 12, even AirPods, the top level there.
Mhm.
Really, really good. But if you are a discerning customer, if your eyes can tell the
Or
difference
if you like
between
to think of
Liquid
yourself
Retina
as a
and Liquid
discerning
Retina
customer,
XDR,
maybe not so discerning, but
Yeah.
you think you are.
maybe
Yeah.
not. If you can tell the difference between an A14 and an M1, we're going to offer this to you as well.
Yeah.
And I think most people are going to buy the iPad Air. I think most people buy the AirPods. I think most people buy the iPhone 12. But those products are there for the customers who, really want to take it to the next step. And it's hard to justify it for any of these products. Yes, the iPhone 12 Pro takes a little better pictures, slightly better. The AirPods Pro is probably the biggest gap because you have the noise canceling and stuff. We just talked about the MacBook Pro, little relatively small differences. And the iPad Pro, if you take away the 12.9 inch screen out of there, small-ish changes. But it's geared toward people who really want to I mean, yes, it's more expensive, but take the price out of it, who just, who want that ultimate Apple experience. The software doesn't always match up. The iPhone 12 runs the same software as the iPhone 12 Pro, macOS, iPadOS, iPadOS. So whatever changes Apple makes to iPadOS, and I do believe there will be some major changes coming this year, the iPad Air is going to get them too. So what makes the iPad Pro, that 12.9 inch screen, that gorgeous screen? I don't know if there is anything other than people who just really want that high-end experience.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. I like the high-end experience.
Oh, we know, Ken.
Well, because I was
no one's doubting
This
that.
is not a shock. I have not surprised you. No, okay.
I was just about to say, riddle me this. I have the 16-inch MacBook Pro with Intel, and it works great.
That old thing?
Yeah, the ancient.
The one they
it might
still
as-
sell.
Yeah, it might as well be like, yeah, a Fossil, or it might as well be a flip phone, obviously, comparatively. But
I wouldn't go quite that far.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I
not
mean,
that far
Apple
out
still
of the,
sells it for like $3,000.
yeah, it's still a great machine.
Yeah,
It's just
so-
not, yeah.
maybe a little hyperbole, but I guess what I'm saying is, riddle me this. If is the only reason then to perhaps ditch that, because again, the M1 iPad Pro much like outperforms the 16-inch MacBook Pro.
But I mean,
why would I do that? Why would I change?
I would never recommend for you to ditch your
Right.
16-inch MacBook for an iPad.
Yeah.
Never. I mean, that's I mean, we're making jokes, but the 16-inch MacBook Pro, the
Yeah.
Intel version, is fantastic.
It's a great machine.
It's
I
a
had one.
gorgeous
It's a
machine, great
machine,
screen,
yeah.
great. It's super powerful.
I like it.
mean, the new M1 it doesn't like lap the 16-inch MacBook Pro. They're pretty close. And when
Mhm.
you're comparing apps to apps, so to speak, they're very, very similar.
Mhm.
So again, the chip inside that machine at the time it was released was, the fastest Intel chip that they could put inside of
Right.
a Mac. And the people who bought that machine, you and Ken, you do work that requires it.
Mhm.
It's the same question. I don't see. It's cool that there's an M1 inside the iPad. I'm not going to dispute that.
Totally.
But I just don't know what all that processing power brings to the experience. It's you're still mainly running one app at a time, sometimes two. You're still only, you're mostly playing mobile games, running mobile apps. I mean, even the most powerful apps on the iPad, they're still mainly companion apps to the Mac. There you can do work. You can get, I can do a day of work on an iPad, sure. But I'm
It's
going to get it
painful,
done
isn't it?
faster and more efficiently on a Mac. Yeah, it is a little
Mhm.
painful at times, sure.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
frustrating. So Julia, wait, I wanted to ask real quick. So you were positing the idea of moving from the 16-inch MacBook Pro to the iPad Pro 12.9?
More of a hypothetical.
Okay, yeah, because I'm with Michael on that. You don't want to do
I
that.
Yeah,
definitely.
However, and this is getting a little far afield. I mean, when the 16-inch M1 or M2 or M1X based, whatever it's called, MacBook Pro comes out this fall, and you are doing a lot of video editing, and you can do a lot more video editing in a set amount of time, then
Sure.
it becomes a more reasonable question to ask. But I
I
don't
mean,
think I see that.
maybe even then. I mean, like that's a really powerful Mac you have.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's not going to be outdated later this year when the new one comes out.
No,
Unless you
Definitely
want to
not
get
worth
like a blue one or a green one or something.
I like the blue.
Well, that's
I hope they
fun.
come out with colors. I want colors.
Yeah, well, they won't come out with it for the Pro.
I know,
It's going to
I
be for
know.
the Air. I'm going to go on record. Maybe we'll talk about this next week. I'm going to go on record saying that I like Apple's return to retro colors in this, or retro inspired colors in the iMac and the iPad Air, and now presumably the MacBook. I think it's awesome,
Mhm.
Yeah,
but we
I'm
don't
with
have
you.
time to get into that today.
Yes.
So I was going to say, looking at, obviously it's a Pro device, and now it's got this crazy fast M1 chip. I guess, I mean, this is definitely a question for both of you, but maybe a little bit more for you, Ken. I'm kind of wondering what's the enterprisey use case here? Besides, it's super fast and pretty to look at. That's not really.
Yeah, that's the Ken Mingus case. That's not the
Yeah.
enterprise case for
Yeah.
it. I mean, I think the enterprise case remains the same. If you
Yeah.
are someone, I can see this as being something for travelers, mobile workers,
Yeah,
frontline workers,
in the field.
In the field, retail workers, where you need at least close to full computing power with you at the edge of whatever your company is doing.
Yeah.
You're a lineman, you're working on a turbine, at the top of one of the wind turbines that are generating electricity, and you need some schematic for something to fix, and you've got an iPad with you. I don't know if you'd have the big one up there or not anyway, but I mean, just so there are various use cases where companies would buy these and
Mhm.
use them. I think for most people, a laptop is, an Apple laptop or Windows laptop, whichever one works for the company, is fine. So, it's more of it is a niche product, and I don't think Apple has very well differentiated it from the phone yet in terms of the operating system and the apps.
Mhm.
We'll see. I remain hopeful that at WWDC this year, we'll see some improvements to iPad OS that make maybe me, maybe Michael, maybe everybody say, oh, that's why the M1 is there.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, it's going to take apps, not
Michael remains
not
skeptical.
OS. Well, I think
that?
You need apps like to
Yeah.
make that M1 chip worthwhile. You need Final Cut. You need Xcode. You know, like real super duper high end working apps and
Pro. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Pro
if
apps.
That's coming. I don't know.
That's what I was going to say. What are the specifics that they can unveil in iPad OS at WWDC that makes you say, "Oh, I get it now"? Is there anything specific you can think of besides Xcode Final Cut?
The number one thing for me would be a more Mac-like workspace.
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so Apple really painted itself into a corner of sorts with the iPad. So at first, when Steve Jobs unveiled it, it was literally a device that was between the phone and the laptop, and he had an easy chair on the stage because that was the point of it. I want to read something. I want to consume something. It was a consumption device. It was $500. At the time, the iPhone was 3.5 inches. The screen was tiny, so we didn't like to use it to read. And the Mac they were big and heavy, big-ish and heavy-ish, I'll say. And so people needed something in between. That's why Apple sold a zillion of them when they first came out, because they were priced right, and the theoretical concept was spot on. It was needed. Mm-hmm. It didn't try to be a Mac. It tried to be a bigger version of the phone. It even looked like it a little bit. Now, Apple's slowly trying to make the iPad more of a production device. And it's still stuck in that old mentality because I don't think it understands what to do. So now we have an we have an iPad with the same chip as a Mac, a better screen than a MacBook, as much RAM as a MacBook Pro, and up to 2 terabytes of storage. You have to assume that there is something going on that Apple says we need this machine. I mean, listen, it's amazing that all of that is in a tablet that's incredibly thin and light. And it's remarkable that Apple was able to make this machine. It'll be more remarkable when they give us a proper use case for it.
Mm-hmm.
Stay tuned.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I hope so. I mean, I just don't know if that's going to come this year.
Something
I also
beyond.
don't know if
I think if it doesn't come
OS
this year, it's going to be a very big missed opportunity because I think there's
maybe,
such an expectation.
What we're describing is such a mythical device. Mm-hmm. The tablet that does everything more efficiently than a PC, and more efficiently than a phone in a pack. I mean, I don't know if it can be done just yet. People have tried and failed. I mean, look at the Surface. That's probably the closest thing to it. And that still has a lot of issues. You know, it's not quite a PC, and it tries too hard on the mobile side, and it's tough because it's hard to do. And you know, Microsoft probably is closest or closer than Apple is to getting that right. You know, that mythical hybrid machine that we're all waiting for.
Yeah.
But I mean, the hardware is it's just like, whoa. I mean, 10 years ago, when the iPad came out, was it 10? Yeah, about 10.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how far it's come in a decade. It's wild.
Yeah.
What's next? What's the next step?
Sure.
But I'm happy you're getting one next week, Ken.
I'm happy.
Yeah. It'll be very exciting.
To me, it really comes down to the hardware, and it is the wonder that you talk about of being able to hold this device and realize the engineering that has been used to develop this and put it in my hands. That just it feels very futuristic to me, and so that's the experience that I'm getting with it.
I do think the display is going to be like oh my goodness, I can't believe that this is in a handheld device. I mean, the way they describe it on the website is amazing, and what we know about Mini LED. And let's not split hairs here. The the current iPad display is also remarkable.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean that it's a simple LCD, but it's awesome. It's the best I've ever seen. I mean, it's better than some OLED screens that I've seen. It is really, really good. And that Apple presumably made that better to just to regular people. Like when you put yours side by side, I think you're going to see a big difference.
I plan to do just that.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Obviously, we'll have a conversation about this in a couple of weeks after I've had some time with it.
Totally. And you can try and sell me on your old iPad.
Make you a deal. Come on.
Yeah. This is just because on the topic of iPad OS, do we have any details about WWDC yet, or is that just still outstanding?
I haven't seen anything. Have you, Michael?
Yeah, not much. Mark Gurman at Bloomberg wrote a story about just in general OS stuff, and there was a little bit in there about the iPad, and that Apple's looking to bring at least widgets and maybe the new home screen to iPad OS this year.
iPad OS didn't have widgets?
No, well, it does, but not the new ones. They're okay. There, but they're off to the side.
Where you can slide it over. It's not like everything else on iPad OS. It's not very well implemented.
It's not. You're right. It's not done well. I mean, if that's it, if that's Apple's big
it's got to be more than that.
I mean, it'll be better than it is now.
More
but and I'll say it again, like they're stuck a little bit because on the one hand, people are craving, something more powerful and more Mac-like. On the other hand, my guess is that 85% of the iPads people buy are for web browsing, email, reading, and movies. So they can't change things too much, or else they lose, the core concept of what the iPad is. So it's the Pro.
Back to the Steve Jobs thing, that's still the easy chair use, and that's still probably
right. And that's most of them. So then you look at the Pro, but can Apple separate the Pro and software-wise? Because they don't do that with their products. That's not what they do. The MacBook Pro isn't different than the MacBook Air. It's just more powerful. But on the Mac, it makes sense. iPhone takes better pictures, and it's a little bit, last year I had OLED screen. It has, some different things that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, iPad, that prompts one remembrance of something that Apple talked about, and that is that feature with the wide-angle front-facing camera. In this world in which people are zooming into work all the time, you can set up the iPad, and because it's got a wide-angle camera, it has
you just got to set
it up, follow you from side to side if you're moving, so that you're still sort of centered. So you could be doing a Zoom call and moving around a little bit in a room and still stay at the center of the frame. We'll see how that works, but
that's cool.
That's something.
But that's not a Pro only thing, That's an iPad thing.
No.
So I the iPad has cool stuff. I just don't know what's Apple's plans for this incredible machine that comes out next week.
Other than having web pages that open even faster in like the split second of a split second. You
can make your words with friends moves a little bit quicker.
Exactly. Those letters are going to click right in.
I mean, it matters.
Speaking of the camera, it's still on the wrong side, but we won't get into that.
You want it to be
it's a landscape device, of course.
Yeah.
Flip the Apple logo and put the camera on the longer edge, please. It makes no sense.
We'll save that for 2022.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I think this is, we'll only hear more, I'm sure, once you have yours in hand next week, Ken, but looking forward to it. And thank you both so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Juliet.
And thank you all so much for watching this episode of Today in Tech. If you liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you're watching on LinkedIn, please do head over to our YouTube channel as well. It's IDG Tech Talk. And over there, you can subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you're notified every single time we post a new video. If there's any questions that you have that we didn't answer during our discussion here, leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you. Quick programming note, we are not going to be here next Thursday. We're actually going to be here on Monday. Next Thursday, I'll be away. So heads up on that. Thank you all again so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.